A short while ago, I had the honor of talking with Idei Hirsi Ali, who I regard as a genuine modern-day heroine and a role model for all individuals who desire to speak and embody the truth. I'll tell you a little bit about her before the discussion starts. Ali, born in 1969, is a Somali Dutch-American author and scholar. She's received international attention as a critic of Islam and an advocate for the rights and self-determination of Muslim women, opposing honor violence, arranged marriage, from which she escaped by emigrating from Somalia, and female genital mutilation, to which she was subject as a child. She's a fellow at Stanford's Hoover Institution and Harvard's Kennedy School, a visiting scholar at the American Enterprise Institute in Washington, D.C., and a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. A former devout Muslim, Hirsi Ali left the faith and became a vocal critic of Islam, particularly in its radical forms. She collaborated on a short movie with Theo Van Gogh in 2004 entitled Submission. The film depicted the oppression of women under fundamentalist Islamic law, sparking controversy and threats of death. Van Gogh was in fact stabbed to death by Mohammed Bouyeri, a Moroccan Dutch Islamic terrorist, later that year. Hirsi Ali maintains that, quote, Islam is part religion and part a political military doctrine. The part that is a political doctrine contains a worldview, a system of laws, and a moral code that is totally incompatible with our constitution, our laws, and our way of life. Her best-selling and influential books include The Caged Virgin, 2004, Infidel, 2006, Nomad, 2010, and most recently, Heretic, 2015, where she calls for a reformation of Islam and the defeat of the Islamists. In 2005, Hirsi Ali was named as one of Time magazine's 100 most influential people in the world. Her critics accuse Ali of building her career on the denigration of Islam and Muslims, questioning her right to speak authoritatively about Islam and the Arab world, and portraying her as the embodiment of the Western colonial civilizing mission discourse. I guess you'll be able to render judgment on that yourself after watching our discussion. I read your recent paper, the one that you wrote for the Hoover Institute called The Challenge of Dawah.
Yes.
And so I thought maybe I'd ask you, if you would, to begin with, just to tell people, if you could give them a brief summary of what you were attempting to accomplish with that. That might be a good way to start.
So what I was trying to accomplish was to get the attention of our society, especially the government, to the ideology that underlies the outbursts of terrorism, the misogyny against women, homophobia, this demand by Islamists who want to kill and eliminate all homosexuals, the outburst again, or the increase in anti-Semitism, the persecution of Christians, trying to kill people like me who are apostates, who are ex-Muslims, and draw attention to the venues where these ideas are disseminated. And these are in schools, it's in the mosque, it's in the madrasa, it's in the neighborhood. And it is authorities, imams, sometimes it's parents. These professionals who say that they are theologians, who are telling young people as young as kindergarten age how to hate and what to hate. And once we understand dawah, once we understand this commitment to get into the heads and hearts of people the ideas of radical Islam, then I think that we will be able to deal better with the terrorism and the symptoms. These are the outcomes of it. Dawah, the call to radical Islam, jihad is an extension of dawah. That's what I'd like to say. Jihad is an extension of dawah. And for me, jihad constitutes the violence, the terrorist acts, and the political violence that's intended to change a society. But we'll never be able to eliminate jihad unless we eliminate dawah.
Okay, so what exactly would you say is the relationship between dawah and jihad? You're formulating it, by the sounds of it, that dawah is the precursor to jihad. And are the concepts reasonably separable? And I guess a subsidiary question of that would be, we're talking about radical Islam, but of course many of the people who are watching are going to be it's going to be difficult for them to distinguish between moderate Islam and radical Islam. And I'm also curious about your feelings about exactly that distinction and how such a thing might be pursued.
So my approach to it is there is one Islam, but there are three sets of Muslims. There's one Islam that is unreformed, and that one Islam consists of different components. It has a religious component, it has a political component, a social component, but it's all encompassing. Now, if you look at the different sets of Muslims, what you see is one set of Muslims who just adhere to the religious prescriptions, and they see being a Muslim as something private. And when they're confronted by others about, the political activists or the bad things that other Muslims do, they invoke the Quran, they invoke the Prophet Muhammad, who is the founder of Islam, by mentioning on his life in Mecca. These are the early days when he first founded this religion, and he was trying to persuade people to come to his God and leave theirs, and using only word of mouth. But then there's that other set of Muslims. I call them the Medina Muslims. They're the ones who are waging jihad. They're the ones who are engaged in dawah. They're the ones who have the objective of subduing the entire world to Islam. They're the ones who hate homosexuals, who hate women, who hate non-Muslims, and who say that it's their duty to die converting people to Islam. I call them the Medina Muslims because they invoke the Prophet Muhammad's life and example and legacy in Medina. And then there is a third group. I call them the modifiers or the reformers. These are Muslims who are standing up to the Medina Muslims, who are saying within Islam as a civilization, as a culture, as a religion, as a political philosophy, we have a theological problem, and we have to deal with that theological problem. So for me, these are the three different sets of Muslims. The problem are the Medina Muslims. They are the ones who are engaged in dawah. Now, you want to differentiate between dawah and jihad. What the Medina Muslims, the Islamists, will tell you is, well, we first start with dawah, we call you to Islam, and if you reject it, then you are an enemy of Islam. And the fact that you then use violence is your fault. You are to blame for it, because in their reasoning, which is secular, they're not going to try and convince you with good arguments on why Sharia or Islamic law is good for you, good for women, good for non-Muslims, good for gays. They're not going to try and bother doing that. They're going to tell you, this is what is in the Quran. This is what Muhammad said. I am informing you. And if you refuse, and these steps to inform, to persuade, to call you, to invite you, then they apply force. And that force, the application of force, that is jihad. But jihad really, for Medina Muslims, means it's a holy war against non-Muslims.